Welcome, everybody. I'm Wana, your feminine embodiment coach. And today, on this uncut episode, I want to share with you about the inner child. I want to actually share with you my story about the inner child and how I deeply connected with the mission and the gift of empowering you, a man or a woman, to connect with your inner child as well. My story began a couple of years back when I was already a coach working in the self development industry or niche for almost 10 years then. I was conducting leadership programs and I was traveling around the world to really empower people to make their dreams come true. And I was at the peak of my life. I designed my life and then I made it happen. I was so passionate and vigorous and just devoted. Hours and hours and hours spent doing what I love to do, which is empowering people. And actually, that has never changed. I started when I was 18. I'm 38 now. And for the last 20 years, I've been doing it with the same level of passion. And I loved what I was doing, and I designed my life, as I said, and every single area of my life was a result of the design I created for myself. So I was really, living the dream, living the dream life that I wanted. Yet, at some point, because I was having all these things in my life, because I was ticking all the boxes, I wasn't able to, really understand what was going on. I had an inner conflict. I was ticking all the boxes, I was having success, and yet I didn't feel happy. I wasn't feeling deeply fulfilled, and I didn't know why. And I was trying to, address it and navigate through it in all these ways, but I just couldn't understand it, figure it out. And I realized that the reason why I was feeling disconflicted was because I wasn't addressing my emotional space, let's say. I wasn't addressing my emotions. And then I realized very soon that the reason why I didn't address my emotion is because I wasn't having a spiritual process to deal with my emotions. So I did something completely crazy. I gave up everything that I created, and I um, started this path of really venturing into the unknown and meeting different other trades and masters and teachers and spiritual gurus and ways in which I would come to understand my spiritual self, my spiritual nature. I knew and figured it out that it was this lack of spirituality that was at the root of me feeling nothing, because feeling nothing was basically, what I was feeling. I was also very concerned about being a woman in a patriarchal masculine society. And I also wanted to, trailblaze for myself the question, what's my bliss, and how can I make it a feminine experience? Because by then I was already, in a leadership position, but very masculine in the way I was doing everything in my life. And I wanted to experience a feminine way of doing life. I wanted to experience a feminine way of engaging with my own power. And these two things actually gave birth to my spiritual mission later on, the things that I knew that are my unique way of making a difference in the world. And you probably already know me here through the feminine workshops that I lead, through the rites of passages for women that I lead. Well, the inner child is also always a part of everything that I facilitate, because the inner child for me is the baseline, is the foundation of the work that we have to engage with and do as women and as men. And it was the baseline for me as well. When I started traveling and understanding more about our human nature, our spirituality as human beings, I came across in a shamanic workshop of this concept of the inner child. And yet the facilitator gave us almost nothing on it. But I became obsessed with it. There was something so relevant for me in this just a simple word back then. You know, there was something that was connecting me to something bigger, right? And it was in the end the solution and the pathway for me to engage with my spirituality and my spiritual self. And I came back home because I was traveling, and I knew I had to find this inner child of mine. And most of my graduates and most of the people in my community know the story, but if you're new here, I'm going to share it anyway. I love to share it because I always love to joke with every single human being that wants to connect with their inner child and fails at the beginning, that I've never found anybody more stubborn or more or such so much slower in connecting with the inner child than me. I became obsessed with this idea, and I developed my own practice of connecting with the inner child, which basically meant I was living on my couch thinking that the inner child will come to me eventually like a revelation. It didn't, right? It didn't. But I knew I shouldn't stop. There was something in my gut telling me I have to go through with it, and just keep pushing against my mind, my resistance, whatever that was blocking this communication. And most of us adults block our communication. Most of us have a resistance towards meeting this part of ourselves, right? And it takes many shapes and forms, from not feeling it, not connecting with it, thinking this is a stupid idea, or feeling too vulnerable or frail in making such a connection, whatever it is, or having, negative emotions towards the inner child part of us. Whatever it is, we may face resistance in connecting with the inner child. And yet that shouldn't stop us. It didn't for me. And I'm so happy and glad. It did appear in a moment I was almost bypassing a car accident, and I saw my life in my front, in my face. I was almost close to an accident, and my life just stopped for a couple of seconds, and I saw this little boy, with big blue eyes and long cheeks, and filled full cheeks, and all his hair up, because the inner child can be a boy or a girl for each one of us. It's not connected to identity and gender, it's connected to energy. So I saw this little boy, and I didn't know what to do with it, but I felt immediately, my instinct told me hug him and secure him, make him feel safe. And I did that, and I started, arranging his hair, and I I immediately got calmed. I was having a panic attack, and I immediately got calmed. And I didn't have a car accident. That was because of my taxi driver, good taxi driver. Thank you so much. But I came later on very happy that I was first physically alive, but also that I felt that something radically changed for me, and it did. Meeting my inner child was the most important thing I've ever done for my mental health, for my emotional well being, for my spirituality, because it opened the door to everything for me, spiritually wise, and in terms of my power and my gifts and who I am in the world. We all are unique people. We all are unique imprints in this world, and we have unique gifts to share, and we grow up in life, and we get to be, we get to embody this life, and we get to absorb everything that other people tell us, but in that process, most of the times we lose our connection with our unique selves. And no matter how much success we gain in our life at a different moment in life, or if we never gain success, we still hunger, right? We still are hungry for, this very important thing called our true self, right? And for me, meeting the inner child was my radical inward pathway to meet my true self. It was the way I started trusting the messages of my soul. It was the way in which I was able to understand what happened to me while I grew up, because I was a very smart person and I made sure, I have everything under control. And I wouldn't give myself permission to feel safe or vulnerable in being emotional. So I was always in control, always smart, and always on top of things. Yet that was very exhausting. And when I met the inner child, I started remembering my long time depression as a child, my deep years of unhappiness in a conflictual family, the sadness of not bonding with my mother on many levels, the craving of having been seen and touched and loved and cared for my mother, which took care of me on a physical level but wasn't a motherly energy, and couldn't bond with me emotionally the way I needed. We were like water and oil. And that hunger, was really creating a lot of emotional scars and wounds on me. And when I realized this is my biggest emotional breakthrough yet to have, and I started working on this for myself together with my inner child, a whole new chapter of my healing, a whole new chapter of my spiritual power emerged, because I realized that the number one issue for me was, learning to attract a mother in my life, learning to sit with the mother energy without being afraid of it, learn later on in my own emotional process to embody, you know, the mother energy and become a mother in the physical sense of the way. And I always talk about it in my feminine work that it's, for me, accessing my femininity is a sacred process that's more connected to healing the mother wound and tapping into the full landscape of being a woman and being feminine, which is much more than being sexy and cool and seducing and being powerful in dynamics with masculine. Because for me, the search for the feminine, which was part of my emotional healing and part of where my inner child led me step by step, has been about gaining access to the mother energy of the feminine, and then early later on learn to become the mother I never had, for myself, for my inner children, for my biological child, and for all the things I love and I want to nurture. And I couldn't have done that by myself. I wasn't even able to attract women in my life that would have had the motherly energy. All the women in my life, all the women, whether they were bosses or mentors or friends in my life, were narcissistic, were toxic for me, were aggressive, and they were bullying me. And I was the nice girl who just took it on, because that was the pattern I decided early on when I felt traumatized and I felt depressed and I felt unseen. That's my coping mechanism. It's how I will survive. And, when I was able to understand that, I started praying, literally. I started praying to the universe to offer me a way out. And it was the inner child. And the inner child helped me access the mother energy, because the inner child, the moment you distinguish it and you separate yourself on a psychological level from him or her, from it, you automatically become its parent. The inner child is a part of your soul. You're not fully identified with your inner child unless you are your inner child, because you don't have the distinction that you're not. Yes. And when you become aware that there's a soul part of you that's part of your inner child, it's a reflection of you in your childhood or from other past lives, a part of your soul that's actually the inner child, that's when you start to own it and embrace it. And by owning it and embracing it, the heroic journey of self-healing emerges, because you are now much more aware, first, of how you felt when you were a child. A lot of our memories are trapped, a lot of our memories are hidden away. right? And you remember how you felt, and you'd start to understand how you felt, because sometimes this understanding is obscured from our rational mind, because we were feeling those feelings when we were little. So our rational mind wasn't so well developed, right? And the moment you realize this, the moment you engage with this is the moment when a lot of healing emerges. And it's very, very powerful. And I started praying, and my inner child helped me become the mother, because it is the relationship that we develop with our inner child. It is how the inner child talks back to us, how she communicates with us, that will teach us love in ways that we didn't have access in our childhood or adolescent years, or even our whole life. And we become parents automatically. It's an instinctual by side effect of our communication with the inner child. And that's what my inner child told me. Just like my physical child made that lesson full and complete, I became a parent for my inner child through communicating with my inner child. And that made room for me to reparent all the ways in which I have absorbed and explored and experienced love, which were toxic ways, right? Were limiting ways that hurt me, that I kept within and still attracted my whole life until I was able to reparent my inner child. So later on in life, when my gift of connecting with my inner child started attracting clients in my sessions, and pushed me into groups. We've been doing the inner child method for 10 years in my mother tongue, and we've empowered thousands of students so far, through all the work that I've done with the women, in my family workshops, but also with men. And later on, this process became a method, and this method is now successfully and proudly part of a 1 year long program. And why 1 year long program? Because it takes 1 year to rewire your brain. It takes 1 year long of physical life to reparent anything. If you want any change in your life, it takes discipline, practice, and time. And that's the truth. Now we live in an era where social media makes it very easy. We think and we want to buy into this illusion that transformation happens in a second. It may happen in a second, the inspiration, the revolution, the aha, but the implementation of that aha takes time. It's how we function as human beings, and that won't change because social media is here, right? So it takes 1 year, and the length and the structure of this very intense boot camp for 1 year of connecting with your inner child, with your soul power, with who you truly are, and really stepping into the light on all corners of your life, is a result of all my students. Is a result coming from my participants who are asking more, needed more. And the structure and the way this was designed is actually the result of the work, of the experience I've had with my students in dealing, working, playing with the inner child. The inner child's programs doors are open for enrollment, and I'm super excited that now we got the opportunity to offer this to the whole world. I've been offering it in my mother tongue, which is Romanian tongue, for the last 10 years, and now finally we can do it in English as well. We've prepared behind the scenes for a lot of years, actually, to make all the preparations, all the materials ready, and now we're ready. So I want to invite you into this journey. I want to welcome you into the world of the inner child, and I'm a click away. You can access all the information, and I really encourage you to do it in all the links in bio and comments down below this video. And please comment with me, what is the number one thing your inner child could help you with? What is the number one thing your inner child could help you with? And I hope I'll see you inside the journey. Say yes to this, because it's really gonna be life changing. Truly giving yourself permission, the time, the discipline, the structure to go all the way in, gonna put in motion a different life. I promise you. Thank you so much for joining us and for joining me in this conversation.